Published 10:48 est, the 14th of November 2017. Updated 11:33 est, the 14th of November 2017. A schoolboy who murdered his teacher during a Spanish class plotted to stab his head of year in the throat and knife a pregnant teacher in the stomach to kill her unborn baby. Pulp Fiction obsessed Will Cornick, now 19, is serving a minimum 20-year sentence for stabbing Anne Maguire during a Spanish lesson at Corpus Christi Catholic College in Leeds, West Yorkshire in 2014. Her family hope an inquest into her death will reveal details about the lead-up to her death with a view to preventing similar school attacks in the future. Wakefield Coroner's Court heard Cornick showed fellow pupils a 13-inch-long knife and boasted of his plot to attack Mrs. Maguire before he stabbed her 8 times during her Spanish class. Mrs. Maguire was stabbed to death by 15-year-old Will Cornick during a Spanish lesson in 2014. An inquiry heard that Cornick, who was 15 when he murdered Mrs. Maguire, 61, at the college on Monday, April 28, 2014, intended to go on to stab pregnant teacher Sinead Miley right in the stomach to kill the baby and stab head of year Andrew Kellett in the throat. Sheila Connor left and Denise Courtney Wright, Anne Maguire's sisters, arrive at court. Also pulled out a bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey, which was alongside the kitchen knife in his red No Fear rucksack, and said it's like a party. An inquest jury heard that Cornick, who was 15 when he murdered Mrs. Maguire, 61, at the college on Monday, April 28, 2014, intended to go on to stab pregnant teacher Sinead Miley in the stomach to kill the baby and stab head of year Andrew Kellett in the throat. Despite more than 10 students knowing Cornick was armed and had alcohol, none told teachers, either fearing Cornick would harm them or believing the threats to be a joke. None of the pupils can be named and must be identified by their initials. KK sat next to Cornick in English, the first lesson of the day. He had heard Cornick was carrying a knife and wanted to see for himself. He showed me the knife and he smiled and pulled out a bottle of Jack Daniel's and said it's like a party drink, said KK. He was saying how he was going to stab Mrs. Maguire and go on and kill Mr. Kellett and attack Miss Miley as well. He said he knew how to do it because he had been studying the human body. Had looked at the human body and how to kill people fast so he could go from Mrs. Maguire to Miss Miley and Mr. Kellett. Anne Maguire's husband Don Maguire left and Stephen Mote, head teacher, and teacher Andrew Kellett Wright arrive at court today. Don and Emma Maguire, the husband and daughter of murdered teacher Anne Maguire, at Wakefield Coroner's Court to hear the inquest into her death. Yesterday, Denise Courtney, Mrs. Maguire's sister, is also attending the inquest. In a TV interview this weekend, she said she had lost her best friend and confidant when her sister was killed. Hay was going to stab Miss Miley in the stomach because she was pregnant and wanted to kill the baby instead of her, and stab Mr. Kellett in the throat because he wanted to go to prison. Emma Conway, who taught Will Cornick art and design for 3 years, until the murder on the 28th of April, gave her evidence via Skype link from Northern Ireland. She said one pupil, JW, had approached her immediately after the murder. She said he did not tell me before it happened. She said he was shaking and told her Cornick had threatened to get us, all of us, if we said anything. She told the jury sitting at Wakefield Coroner's Court that Anne Maguire was a well-liked and a mother figure to students. Mrs. Conway described Will Cornick as a very creative artist, but he was quiet and he would hide behind his hair. He reminded me of an awkward teenage boy. He was very quiet, she told the inquest. He didn't project himself and necessarily want attention. The family have campaigned for more information about the killing so lessons can be learned. Shay also had dealing with Cornick in her role in the school's Duke of Edinburgh scheme. Cornick had been disappointed when he was unable to go on the expedition element of the scheme following an operation to remove an ingrowing toenail. He was very obviously annoyed with that and it was the most emotional I had seen him, she said. She discovered Cornick had been drinking alcohol at a weekend and had fallen over grazing his arm. Mrs. Conway reported the matter to Chris Fletcher, a child protection officer at Corpus Christi Catholic College, said he knew of the situation. Mrs. Conway said, I taught Will for 3 years and I personally had no sense, no idea, and it still haunts me and still shocks me that he would do something so horrific. It clearly had a negative impact on my future. I feel I cannot predict any longer any student. For him to turn round and become so incomprehensibly violent is something that terrifies me. Mrs. Maguire's daughter Emma arrived at a hearing with her father yesterday morning. The inquest heard that the school had no written no knives policy and teachers assumed pupils would know not to. Head of English Marie Coleman had taught Cornick for the first period that morning, when he had been producing the knife and bottle of whiskey, and telling pupils of his intentions. She had to leave the classroom for 10 minutes to deal with the teacher's absence and did not know what Cornick had been doing. If that happened, I have no knowledge of it, and the lesson was quite normal when I was there, she told the inquest. She said why students fail to inform teachers was unfathomable. I have no idea why they didn't report it, she said. The inquest continues. Sorry, we are not currently accepting comments on this article.